Good morning, I'm Debbie Cruz. It's Tuesday, June 3rd. San Diego's Democratic leaders are speaking out against a recent ICE raid. More on that next. But first, the headlines. The San Diego County Water Authority and the LA-based Metropolitan Water District of Southern California have ended a 15-year legal dispute. It's centered mainly over how much Metropolitan charged the Water Authority for water and how it was calculated. Water Authority Board Chair Nick Serrano says the agreement will be good for San Diego ratepayers.
Water Authority has an abundance of water supplies that aren't being used by our residents, but is coming at a cost to our ratepayers. This opens the door, unlocks the potential for us to be able to move that water to other jurisdictions that may need it.
It's estimated the years of litigation cost both agencies about $40 million. The city of San Diego is observing National CPR and AED Awareness Week with an event today. They'll be offering free training from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Civic Center Concourse Breezeways. An AED is a small machine that can deliver a shock to the heart when an abnormal rhythm is detected. Organizers say attendees can stop by and learn CPR and how to use an AED from trained professionals in less than 5 minutes. There's a slight chance of showers today and tomorrow in the county's valley areas. Meanwhile, in our mountain and desert regions, there is a slight chance of thunderstorms. Those could bring heavy rain, lightning, and wind. It's also expected to get cooler through the middle of the week, with highs ranging from the 60s near the coast up to the upper 90s in the desert. The National Weather Service is also warning of elevated surf and strong rip currents at the beach through tomorrow. From KPBS, you're listening to San Diego News Now. Stay with me for more of the local news you need.
KPBS On Demand is supported by the San Diego County Toyota dealers, presenting the new 2025 Camry with refined design and performance. Visit your local Toyota dealer to learn more about all the features the new 2025 Camry offers. The San Diego County Toyota dealers. We make it easy.
Democratic lawmakers are responding to a workplace raid by ICE agents in South Park last week. Reporter Gustavo Solis says the congressional leaders had harsh words about how the raid was handled.
More than 20 ICE agents conducted a workplace immigration raid in South Park Friday afternoon. They wore body armor, carried large rifles, and even used flashbang grenades to clear a crowd of protesters. On Monday, San Diego's Democratic congressional representatives called the raid aggressive, reckless, and counterproductive. Congressman Juan Vargas says the militarized response has traumatized the community.
Why were ICE agents armed to the teeth as if they were entering a war zone, storming restaurants? Why were ICE agents aggressively shoving people against the walls and handcuffing every worker in sight?
Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs points out that none of the 4 people arrested have violent criminal records.
This isn't about going after criminals. They're going after people who are trying to do the right thing and people who are contributing to our economy.
Both Vargas and Jacobs acknowledge that, as members of the minority party in Washington, D.C., their legislative options are limited. An ICE spokesperson did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
After a series of fatal encounters with police, National City has tried to keep officers from being the first to respond during mental health crises. South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki looked into the changes the city has made.
In 2018, National City police officers arrested a black man named Earl McNeil. They used a full-body restraint device and a mesh face covering to bind his arms and legs. McNeil had a heart attack in custody. A year later, in 2019, officers held a white man named Tony Wilson against the ground and tased him repeatedly. He stopped breathing. And in 2021, officers confronted a Latino man named Ryan Umana. He was walking barefoot in the rain, holding a machete. The officers tased and shot him 8 times. In all 3 cases, the families of these men say they were experiencing mental health crises. Independently, each of the families sued the city, accusing officers of using excessive force. In all 3 cases, National City leaders decided to pay to settle the lawsuits instead of allowing them to go to trial. This past February, they approved the final settlement, $1 million for Umana's family.
I want there to be some transparency and accountability.
Sophia Bendari is the daughter of Wilson, the man who was held down and tased. She says it felt like the police used her father's mental illness and the fact that he had used drugs and had been in and out of jail to try and paint his life as less important.
Like, they literally talked about my dad like he was a piece of garbage. And it's like, he was a human being.
Joanna Schwartz is a professor of law at UCLA and a national expert on police misconduct litigation. She says lawsuits like these are opportunities for cities to examine what might have gone wrong and what changes they could make to prevent future fatal encounters.
There may have been wrongdoing by police. There may not have been wrongdoing by police. But you're never going to know the answer to that question unless you actually look at the information in that lawsuit and try to understand what went wrong.
But often, Schwartz says that kind of reflection doesn't happen.
What I have found is that often law enforcement agencies don't even do that first step of trying to learn from the lawsuits that have been brought against them.
In the 7 years since that first in-custody death, elected officials in National City have made some changes. Under pressure from the public, the city council pushed to keep police officers from being the first to respond to people in mental health crises. Marcus Bush is the vice mayor of National City.
Police were considering before, but it wasn't as big a priority. So these incidences, unfortunately, push it to priority, push it at the forefront.
The city already had a program called the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team, or PERT, county mental health workers who respond alongside officers. But the county has struggled to fully staff the program, and their teams are not always available. In June 2021, the city council voted to partner with the county to deploy a new program, the Mobile Crisis Response Teams, or MCRTs. The police chief at the time, Jose Tellez, said it was an important step.
Police responders that not having to answer these calls or being the first ones to respond is it's a good thing.
MCRT teams are also made up of licensed clinicians, but they do not include any armed officers. They're also dispatched primarily through the 988 crisis number instead of 911 and are available 24/7. National City was one of the first cities in the county to sign up.
What's really exciting is when I look at year over year, we're doubling our call volume every year.
Bree Lane is a program administrator with Telecare, the company that runs the MCRT program for most of San Diego County. She says 4 years in, they're seeing positive signs.
It just shows the word's getting out. People are feeling more comfortable to access MCRT. It means law enforcement's accessing us more for people they're coming in contact with.
In 2023, the city also launched a small team of caseworkers to respond to homelessness-related calls. They do coordinate closely with police, but their team also does not include armed officers. But when it comes to these civil rights lawsuits, it's unclear what the city has learned from them. The police department declined multiple requests for interviews and refused to say what lessons they're learning from these cases, or whether they have made any changes to their policies.
What could we do better? No, we have not had that conversation. I think we should.
Bush, the vice mayor, says the police department has made strides when it comes to building trust, but he acknowledges that the city council needs to more openly discuss these cases.
I think where we leave it is, this was really bad. Let's make sure this doesn't happen again, and let's move on. But we don't take enough proactive steps to, what are we making sure to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Bush says he hopes to change that pattern by having more discussions on the council and expanding the role of the city's Citizen Oversight Board. Bendari, Wilson's daughter, is hopeful about some of those changes.
Admitting you have a problem is part of a resolution, and I think that's huge. It really, really is.
Above all, though, Bendari wants to remind city officials that people in crisis are just as human and deserve to be treated with just as much dignity. In National City, Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
The San Diego family of a soldier killed in World War II was presented with the Congressional Gold Medal yesterday. Military reporter Andrew Dyer has more on this story, 82 years in the making.
They fought for 5 months and gave everything up and left nothing for their own survival.
That's Steve Unwin. He's with his family at the House of the Philippines in Balboa Park to accept a Congressional Gold Medal on behalf of his grandfather, Army Major James O'Donovan. O'Donovan was among the first Americans in combat during World War II, fighting in the Philippines during Japan's invasion. He survived the Bataan Death March after the battle, but died 6 months later as a prisoner of war. His remains weren't identified until this year through DNA, and in April he was laid to rest at Miramar National Cemetery.
That was a huge tectonic event in the family. We're also thrilled that he's with us now and here in San Diego.
In 2017, Congress awarded the Congressional Gold Medal to all Filipino and American soldiers who fought in the Philippines during the war. Andrew Dyer, KPBS News.
Voting begins in the South Bay this week in the runoff election for the county's District 1 supervisor, a race that will decide whether Democrats or Republicans have more influence over the county government. South Bay reporter Corey Suzuki is also exploring how the top two candidates would vote on urgent issues facing the county. Today, he looks at the cross-border sewage crisis.
When it comes to the sewage flows polluting the Tijuana River Valley, the two candidates for the District 1 seat agree that the county needs to be doing more to help neighborhoods cope with the crisis. The difference largely comes down to experience. Paloma Aguirre is a Democrat and the mayor of Imperial Beach. She's also a former environmental advocate and has worked on the crisis for years. Aguirre says the county needs to do more to monitor the public health impacts.
Nobody's at the wheel. Nobody is studying the long-term chronic health effects of exposure to air and water pollution.
Running against Aguirre is Republican John McCann, the mayor of Chula Vista. He has less experience working on the sewage crisis, but has become more vocal about it recently. McCann says he wants to increase pressure on officials in Mexico.
Really what needs to happen is the politicians on the Mexican side have to be able to treat their own sewage.
We'll have more tomorrow on the candidates and immigration policy. The last day to cast your ballot is July 1st. Corey Suzuki, KPBS News.
That's it for the podcast today. As always, you can find more San Diego news online at kpbs.org. I'm Debbie Cruz. Thanks for listening, and have a great Tuesday.
KPBS On Demand is supported by Latino Legacy Foundation, presenting their Storyteller series, Reach for the Stars with Ellen Ochoa, the first Latina astronaut, former NASA director, and San Diego native, Sunday, June 29th. More at latinolegacyfoundation.org.